but can I really talk about what I really want to talk about? When we see stuff like that, I think we're looking at power struggles, right? And let me tell you why I think everything has nothing to do with race like we want to make it think it is, but it's more about power. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. But first, let me let you know what I'm going to cover in this week's episode, Nolan Wells. We're going to talk about what's trending and the race things that are going on. We're also going to talk a little bit about Ida B. Wells. So, and we're also going to talk about why I believe that a lot of Black women in particularly are getting fired or are being targeted. And so we're going to talk about those two things. And I'm going to be honest. If you can't deal with honesty, you might want to go ahead and click off. I'm not going to be brutal. I'm not going to be mean, but I am going to be honest. So if you can't deal with that, you might just want to say, and click off. Okay. But if you can and you want to listen, again, I remind people consistently, we all have points of views. We all have experiences. We all come from different backgrounds. So just because you may have never experienced something, it doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't. And just because you may have experienced something and I haven't, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily not telling the truth. So let's respect one another's perspective, but also sometimes it's not about perspective. It's about looking at what you see in your face and what you know to be true. And do you have the courage to tell the truth? Okay. So all of that and more coming up right here on TCLN Network. I'm IBK. Only on TCLN Network. Education for your elevation and leadership insights to your advantage. All right, so welcome back to the Creative Leadership Network, which is known as TCLN Network. And the leadership question that is guiding this episode this week is this. If your son was killed, or your daughter was killed, or a family member, or someone you loved, even a great friend, and you started an organization, and that organization was very important to you, and you started this because you wanted to get the message out, you wanted to get the word out, you wanted to stand up for something that was right, and then some people come along and they steal it from you because they say that you're too angry, you're too militant, you're too this and you're too that, so we don't think that you should be over it. How would you feel? And you may say, well, why do you consider that to be a leadership question? It is. We're going to get there. But first, I'm just asking, how would you feel? Do you feel that that's right? Well, let me tell you what my perspective is. I don't feel that that's right. And of course, you're going to be upset because somebody you loved, something has happened to them. So let's talk about Ida B. Wells. Since she's been brought up, and Nolan Wells, I've been watching this for a while. And a lot of stuff is cocked up to race. A lot of stuff is cocked up to diversity, right? But remember when I talked about the First Amendment? And of course, I just asked you this question, right? How would you feel if that was done to you? Remember me asking you that? Well, let's talk about Ida B. Wells. Do you know that she founded the NAACP? Do you know that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And I know that there are people that say, oh, well, yeah, no, she co-founded it. No, no. Let me tell you something. I attended the University of North Texas. And when I enrolled there, you know, when you enroll in school, sometimes you have a little bit of time before it's time for you to actually start classes, right? So I decided to go and get a book from the library. I did not know that I would stumble upon her. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I hadn't even never heard of her. I'm sorry, it's true. I never even had heard of her. But what ended up attracting me to the book is that I had signed up for journalism. So I started at the community college with journalism. And then when I transferred to the university, That was my courses, which was journalism. During that time, my mother was terminated, so I was having a hard time. But the one class I knew that I wanted to keep while I was still at the community college was journalism. And I don't know why, but I just knew that I was attracted to it and I wanted to stay there, right? So, but like I said, I'm at the library. I come across this book, Ida B. Wells. And I begin to read. I go ahead and check it out. I begin to read about this woman. I begin to read about her life and her experience and about her best friend being lynched. That's how she started these movements. That's how things were, that's pretty much what we know her for. We know her for being adamant about standing in America against lynchings, right? You hear people mention her when it comes to lynchings, especially when you see these stories in the media, people talking about people being hung from trees, right? So as I read about her, that's when I began to find out that she actually founded, she wasn't a co-founder, she actually founded the NAACP. And talk about First Amendment rights being violated. Talk about this lady being violated. But anyway, she would have to go out of the United States of America to talk to people across the globe about lynching in America. And I don't know if you've heard about it, but that's what she did. So there would be white people that lived in other countries that would back her campaigns, that would support her and support her travelings and her speakings. Also, what people don't understand is that it was black people that took her, that took the NAACP from her. It says that these people, they stepped in, they said she was too angry, too militant, and that they basically overtook it. But how they disrespected her is that historically they withheld her honor. That's the disrespectful part. So historically, they withheld that she founded this. So I guess I subtracted when she died. She died in 1931. I subtracted that from 2026. When you subtract that date, that leaves you with, I think, 98 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think around about 98 years. Well, you know that your grandmother could be living today. You understand what I'm saying? You know that, like, that's really not that long ago. So what I'm saying is that there could still be some people and their family members and stuff still living that know the truth. And so what they did is they went back and credit her as a co-founder, right? But the thing that I notice about when you hear the NAACP speaking all the time, you very rarely hear them honor her. You very rarely hear them even speak of her so much. And I think that is so disrespectful what was done to her. And that's why I asked you that question earlier. How would you feel if that happened to you? How would you feel if somebody said, well, we're going to take your business from you because of your attitude, because you're going through some things and nobody's there to help you and you have to work through those things yourself. You have to go and travel, whatever it is that your situation may be. But somebody, because they want to steal from you, they see opportunity, they want to oversee it, they want to be in charge of it. So then they have the nerve to steal it from you and then make up excuses about why they took it from you, but you the one founded it. I think that was very, I don't care what no one say, that was very disrespectful. And you say, well, girl, why are you bringing it up now? What's going on? Because I see the way people race bait. I see everybody who was going to get up there on that social media start acting like, oh, Ida B. Wells. They all making up all, coming up with all these stories about why Nolan was lynching and why this and this and this and this and that. But can we talk about how us this is, not me per se. When I say us this is, I'm talking about people of color did this to this woman. In order for you to acknowledge her, you first have to acknowledge what you did to her. Now, mind you, I am passionate about that. When I went to college, it didn't quite work out like I thought it was going to work out. Once I got to the university, I had people targeting me and trying to get me out of there for whatever their reasons were. At that time, I wasn't outspoken. I was still quiet and reserved, but I had some people working in behind closed doors trying to target me and do things to me. But anyway, what ended up happening is I took all my rent. I've said this before, and I paid all my rent, and they ended up pulling a false eviction on me. And what ended up happening, I said, child, I'm just going to go to California, you know. So I ended up going to California. But like I said, I held this knowledge about Ida B. Wells. And then I got into screenwriting, I got into screenplays, and I wrote a short about her. And I didn't necessarily talk about the NWC, AP like that or nothing like that. It was just about her life and to honor her. And I remember somebody told me, they say, hey, that's really good. Make it into a one woman play, you know, and, see if you can get someone to either act it on stage. They have a lot of theater around here, or see if you can do it yourself. But I carried that knowledge about her like that. So when I seen people getting up there and they about to go to toodles, first of all, before even people start race baiting, first of all, can we acknowledge that Ida B. Wells was done an injustice by Black men who took over her idea? Can we just first acknowledge that? Can we also acknowledge that they kind of kept her off the history of that for a while, and then they finally gradually put her up there? Can we first, before we start hollering white folk did and white folk that and white folk this and white folk that, and can we first acknowledge what we done to this lady? And when I say we, I don't mean me and you, y'all. I'm talking about as the Black race, because that was wrong, what was done to Ida B. Wells. And that brings me to my next point that I want to talk about. Only on TCLN Network, education for your elevation and leadership insights to your advantage.